The call came just after 9 on a pale Tuesday morning. Linda Shaw was rinsing her coffee mug when the phone buzzed against the counter, its vibration cutting through the stillness of her kitchen. She almost didn't answer. Spam calls had become their own sort of background noise, but the caller ID read Cindy Ray, Cumberland Credit Union. "Morning, Linda," came Cindy's soft Tennessee lilt. "Sorry to bother you, but something popped up on your account that I thought you should know about." Linda straightened, a faint ache tugging in her lower back. "Go ahead." "Well, someone tried logging in using your social security number and date of birth. It flagged security right away." There was a pause. "When I called the number listed in the attempt, your daughter answered. Rachel, right?" A long silence filled the line. Linda could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock. "What did she say?" she asked quietly. "She said she was helping you set up a future financial plan." Cindy hesitated. "I told her that wasn't how these things work, and that I'd be notifying you personally." "Thank you for doing that," Linda said, steady but distant. "Please don't lock the account, I'll handle it." "Of course. Just be careful, hun." When the call ended, Linda leaned against the counter, staring through the kitchen window. The maple tree outside was shedding its leaves too early this year, burnt orange specks collecting along the fence line. She pressed her fingertips to the cool granite, her mind already sorting through the next steps like files in an invisible cabinet. Her phone buzzed again. A new text. "Rachel, you really need to think about the future, Mom. We can't put these things off forever." Linda's jaw tightened. The future. Rachel's favorite word lately, delivered with a tone that meant control disguised as concern. She didn't reply. Instead, she turned off the phone and went down the hall toward her study. The filing cabinet sat where it always had, tucked neatly beneath the window. She pulled open the top drawer, the faint scent of old paper rising like dust from a long memory. Inside, decades of order, tax returns, pension forms, medical insurance summaries, mortgage statements. Each folder was labeled in her tight, tidy handwriting. She began stacking documents in piles across the desk. Bank accounts, property taxes, life insurance. She'd spent 40 years in nursing, balancing other people's lives down to the decimal. She could certainly balance her own. As she worked, her thoughts drifted to Rachel's tone the last few months, gentle, persuasive, rehearsed. "We just want to help," she'd said at Thanksgiving. "You've worked hard, Mom. Let us make sure it's all safe." Safe for whom? By noon, sunlight had angled through the blinds, striping the desk with narrow bands of light. A small notepad sat open beside the files. She wrote a single line at the top. "To be reviewed. Legal protections." The words steadied her. She wasn't angry. Anger was loud and useless. She preferred quiet precision, the kind of calm that left no cracks to slip through. She picked up her landline and dialed a number she hadn't used in months. Cindy answered immediately. "Cindy, it's Linda again. One question. If I wanted to ensure no one can access or even inquire about my accounts, not even family, what's the process?" "You'd need to set up a private authorization list and signature verification. Only you can make changes." "Good," Linda said. "Let's start there." When she hung up, she sat for a moment, listening to the low hum of the house. She thought of Rachel, her polished voice, her expensive watch, the way she'd begun treating Linda's home like an inheritance waiting to be managed. A mother's instinct used to soften those edges. But now, something firmer took its place, a line being quietly drawn. She gathered the folders into a neat stack, slid them into a canvas tote, and zipped it closed. There was an estate office downtown. She remembered passing it near the courthouse, the name Connor Blake on the sign. Maybe it was time for a visit. As she stood, her phone vibrated once more on the counter. "Rachel, Don't make things complicated, okay? We're just trying to help. Linda stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then she set the phone face down beside the sink. Outside, a gust swept through the trees, scattering leaves across the driveway. She locked the front door, the sound of the bolt clicking home like punctuation. And for the first time in a long while, she smiled. Small, private, deliberate. She was done being managed. The restaurant Rachel chose was all dim lighting and neutral tones, the kind of place that made every conversation sound more civil than it was. Linda sat across from her daughter in a corner booth, her canvas tote resting quietly beside her chair. She hadn't been to the Coppervine in years. The last time, Rachel had been celebrating a work promotion. Tonight felt different, calculated, rehearsed. Rachel smoothed the napkin across her lap, her diamond bracelet catching the candlelight. "I'm glad you came," she said with a brightness that didn't reach her eyes. "You've been so busy lately, I was starting to think you were avoiding me." "I've just been organizing a few things," Linda said. "Trying to keep my house in order." Eric offered a faint smile from beside his wife. He looked tired. Always did when Rachel was in manager mode. His hand hovered near his glass, as if waiting for permission to take a drink. Rachel signaled the waiter, ordered a bottle of wine, and didn't ask what Linda wanted. When the server left, she reached into her designer tote and set down a slim folder on the table, sliding it forward like an offering. "I've been working with a friend at the firm," she began lightly. "It's just easier if we name me as your financial power of attorney now. You know, before anything ever happens." Linda looked at the folder but didn't touch it. The paper was thick, expensive. The kind attorneys use to make something feel official. "Before anything happens," she repeated, the words dry as chalk. Rachel smiled as if talking to a patient in recovery. "Mom, it's not a big deal. It just helps me help you. I can manage bills, deposits, property stuff, all the little things you shouldn't have to stress over." Linda picked up her water glass. The condensation left a small ring on the white tablecloth. "You think I'm stressed?" "I think you're getting older," Rachel said carefully, lowering her voice. "And you've always been so independent, which is great, but sometimes that makes transitions harder." Eric cleared his throat, glancing toward the bar. "Maybe we should—" Rachel shot him a quick look that froze the sentence midair. Linda finally reached for the folder, opening it halfway. Legal jargon filled the page. Durable, irrevocable, authorization. Her nurse's mind scanned it quickly, noting every unchecked line and blank signature space. She took her time, each second pressing against the silence. "Did your friend at the firm write this up?" she asked. "Yes, and he said it's very straightforward. I can walk you through it." Linda folded the papers back neatly, her fingers precise. "No need." Rachel tilted her head, the smile stretching thinner. "Mom, we're just talking hypothetically. You don't have to decide tonight." "Oh, I know." Linda slipped the folder toward her side of the table, tucking it beside her purse. "But I'll need to review it carefully before I sign anything." A beat of quiet settled between them. The waiter arrived with their food, the smell of roasted chicken and thyme breaking the tension but only slightly. Rachel's face softened back into that public warmth she used for clients. "Of course," she said, cutting her steak with unnecessary precision. "We'll talk later then." Eric kept his eyes down, slicing through his baked potato as if it might save him from having to pick a side. Linda ate slowly, tasting almost nothing. She'd spent her life reading people, patients, doctors, even frightened families who smiled through panic. Rachel wasn't nervous. She was confident. Too confident. Whatever her daughter was building had been in motion for a while. When the check came, Rachel reached for it automatically, then stopped halfway. "You know what, Mom? I'll let you get this one. You always like things fair." Linda placed her card on top without a word. The drive home was quiet, the city lights flickering across the windshield as she turned down her familiar street. The house greeted her in its usual hush, porch light glowing, curtains drawn. She set the takeout box on the counter and opened the folder once more under the kitchen light. Every page screamed of ownership, Rachel's, not hers. The ink even smelled new, like something freshly claimed. She slipped the forms into a manila envelope and tucked them deep into her desk drawer beneath the folder labeled "To be reviewed, legal protections." Then she opened her planner, drew a small star beside tomorrow's date, and wrote a single name: Connor Blake, estate law. Her pen hovered over the page for a moment. She could still hear Rachel's polished tone at dinner. "It's just easier if we name me as financial POA now." Linda closed the planner and exhaled, the faintest tremor of resolve running through her. Tomorrow her daughter would learn that easy wasn't part of the plan. Downtown Nashville glimmered under a pale winter sun, the streets half busy with mid-morning foot traffic. Linda found a spot outside a small brick building wedged between a coffee shop and an insurance office. The brass plaque by the door read, "Connor Blake, Attorney at Law, Estate and Trusts." The lettering gleamed, freshly polished, but the building itself had the comforting weight of something that had been standing a long time. She stepped inside, greeted by the scent of lemon polish and paper. A receptionist looked up from her desk. "Ms. Shaw? Mr. Blake will be right with you. Can I get you some coffee?" "No, thank you," Linda said, setting her canvas tote beside her chair. She kept her posture straight, her expression neutral. It wasn't nerves exactly, just the awareness that she was about to start something she couldn't undo. Connor Blake emerged a moment later. Mid-40s, pressed gray suit, a presence that carried calm rather than pressure. His handshake was firm but brief. "Linda Shaw? I'm glad you reached out. Come on back." His office was bright and uncluttered, framed degrees on one wall, a photo of a little league team on another. He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "So, what can I do for you today?" Linda pulled out her folder. Not the one Rachel had handed her, the one she'd built herself. Each section labeled in pencil tabs: property, accounts, insurance, pensions. Her handwriting filled several pages of yellow legal pad, precise and small. She laid it out before him like an open ledger. Connor adjusted his glasses, scanning her notes. "You keep better records than most of my clients," he said with a grin. "You don't miss a thing, do you?" "I learned early on that what you don't write down tends to vanish," Linda said quietly. He nodded, flipping to another page. "You've got the house, 2 savings accounts, a modest investment portfolio, and a pension annuity. You want to set up a trust?" "Yes. One that can't be rewritten behind my back." Connor looked up, sensing the edge beneath her tone. "Someone trying to?" "My daughter's been eager," Linda said, choosing the word carefully. "She thinks planning for my future means controlling it." Connor leaned back, thoughtful. "That's more common than you'd think. And you're right to get ahead of it. We can structure a living trust with layered authorization, so no one can access or alter anything without your direct approval." "I want safeguards," Linda said. "Detailed restrictions. No automatic inheritances, no joint accounts, no power of attorney access unless I initiate it." He began typing notes. The rhythmic click of the keys filled the room, measured and precise. "You're describing what I call a fortress trust. It's a bit more paperwork, but ironclad." "Good," Linda said. "Then make it airtight." They worked for nearly an hour, reviewing clause after clause. Connor explained in plain language what each line protected, and Linda listened with the same attention she once gave to monitoring a patient's vital signs. Steady, unflinching. When he finished, he sat back and folded his hands. This trust keeps control solely in your hands until you say otherwise. You can assign secondary beneficiaries, of course, but no one can touch your assets while you're alive, not even peek at them. Linda's lips curved slightly. That's exactly what I want. He hesitated before asking, "Do you want your daughter to know you're setting this up?" Linda looked out the window at the sun cutting across the courthouse steps. For a long moment, she didn't answer. "No," she said finally. "If she thinks she's steering things, she'll stay predictable. I'd rather she never sees the wheel." Connor smiled faintly. "Understood. I'll make sure correspondence goes only to your address. You'll get physical copies tomorrow for review." Linda gathered her papers, sliding each page back into the folder with the same care she'd once used to fold a hospital chart closed. "I appreciate your discretion, Mr. Blake." "Connor, please," he said, standing. "And I'll say this. You're one of the rare ones who comes in before the storm instead of after it." Linda gave a quiet nod. Storms are easier to weather when you've already boarded the windows. As she walked out, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood, she passed a young woman entering with a baby on her hip, visibly anxious. The contrast wasn't lost on her. Some people came here to protect futures they hadn't planned for. She'd come to reclaim hers. Outside, the air had cooled, sky dimming toward afternoon gray. She opened her phone and saw a missed call. Rachel Shaw. No voicemail, no text, just the quiet mark of persistence. Linda slipped the phone back into her bag, her expression unreadable. Tomorrow, Rachel would likely ask about dinner, or the papers, or something else wrapped in the word help. And Linda would smile, just enough to keep her guessing. Saturday morning came dressed in mild sunlight, the kind Nashville wore just before spring decided to commit. Linda sat on her porch with her second cup of coffee, the newspaper unread beside her. She already knew the day wouldn't be ordinary, not after Rachel's chipper voicemail from last night. "Mom, Eric and I found a few lovely condos near a great care facility, just for future planning. We'll pick you up at 10. The way Rachel said care facility made it sound like a resort. Linda had smiled at the message, not for its content, but for the confidence behind it. Rachel believed she was still directing the game. At 10 sharp, the silver SUV rolled into the driveway. Rachel stepped out first, all pastel blazer and efficiency. Eric followed, less polished, his movements heavy with reluctance. "Doesn't the day look perfect for a drive?" Rachel called, her tone that brittle mix of cheer and purpose. "Sure does," Linda replied, locking her front door. She carried her small purse, no tote this time, and slipped into the back seat. They drove past the city limits, through clean stretches of highway lined with new construction, rows of identical houses with no trees, yet old enough to cast shade. Rachel narrated the drive like a tour guide. "You'll love this place, Mom. It's near shops, great medical access, and the HOA handles everything. You'd never have to worry about maintenance again." Linda smiled faintly, keeping her voice mild. "Sounds convenient." Eric shot her a quick, uneasy glance in the rearview mirror. The first condo complex sat on a gentle hill overlooking a manicured pond. Inside the model unit, everything gleamed: granite counters, neutral walls, faint lemon scent from a diffuser in the corner. Rachel moved through it like she already owned it. "Look at the natural light. And you'd have neighbors your age, people to walk with, play cards with, all that. It'd be such a community," Rachel said. Linda touched the countertop. "It's nice." Rachel turned to her, radiant with enthusiasm. "You could sell your house quick. There are cash buyers everywhere right now." "Eric checked the listings, didn't you?" Eric nodded, eyes down. "Market's still strong." "You could get a great return. And we'd manage it all for you," Rachel added. "Listing, moving, even the legal work. We've already talked to a realtor friend. She's local and excellent. Linda tilted her head. You've talked to a realtor already? Rachel blinked, caught for a heartbeat but recovered quickly. Just to get a sense of timing, it never hurts to be proactive. Linda wandered toward the sliding glass door, gazing out at the pond. Her reflection looked steady in the glass, older but unbent. She could almost hear Connor's calm voice from 2 days ago. You'll stay in control as long as you choose to. Behind her, Rachel continued describing square footage and resale value, her voice looping like an infomercial. Eric stood by the kitchen island, rubbing the back of his neck. Linda turned back to them, gentle as a nurse breaking hard news. It's certainly something to think about. Rachel clasped her hands together a little too fast. That's all I'm saying, Mom. Just think about it. They visited 2 more condos. Identical layouts, identical smiles from the sales agents. Linda played the part of the considerate elder, nodding thoughtfully, asking mild questions, never once tipping her hand. By the 3rd stop, Rachel was glowing with satisfaction. I knew you'd be open to this once you saw the options, she said, sliding into the driver's seat. Linda folded her hands in her lap. I'll think about it, she said again, the same calm tone she used when patients swore they were following their diets. Back at the house, Rachel followed her inside. Oh, before I forget. She reached into her purse and handed over a glossy business card. Harrison Realty Group, Nashville Estates. Linda noticed the handwriting on the back. Her own name, address, and the words, property evaluation pending. Rachel smiled, sweet and bright. Just in case you want to move quickly, they're ready whenever you are. Linda turned the card over in her fingers, reading the faint indentation of her daughter's tidy script. That's thoughtful, she said evenly. Rachel kissed her cheek, the motion mechanical. You'll thank me later, Mom. This is about peace of mind. When the SUV disappeared down the street, Linda stood in the doorway for a long time. Then she set the card on the counter beside her stack of mail, smoothed it flat, and placed a sticky note over it with a single word written in blue ink. Test. She stared at it until her pulse steadied, until her expression softened back into calm. Then she reached for her phone and scrolled to Connor's number. Mr. Blake, she said when he answered, her tone even, almost cordial. I think it's time we finalize that property clause we discussed. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering another wave of pale leaves across her yard. Tomorrow, Rachel would realize the sale she'd imagined was never hers to make. By late Monday morning, a thin layer of cloud had dulled the Nashville skyline, muting the color of everything it touched. Linda parked along 2nd Avenue and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her lipstick was neat, her hair brushed smooth, her expression composed. Everything about her said routine errand, not quiet rebellion. Inside Connor Blake's office, the mood was steady and deliberate, just the way she liked it. The scent of coffee drifted faintly from somewhere down the hall. Connor greeted her at the door to the conference room, jacket off, sleeves rolled once at the cuffs. Good morning, Ms. Shaw. Ready to make it official? Let's get it done, she said. The folder waiting on the table looked harmless. Crisp paper, blue ink pen placed precisely at the top. But Linda understood the power of signatures, how they could alter the shape of a life more than any argument could. Connor reviewed the documents one last time, speaking plainly. This deed transfer moves the property title into your trust. From this point forward, you, not Rachel or anyone else, are the sole authority over the house. No co-ownership, no shared liability. Everything routes through the trust. Linda nodded. And it stays that way unless I change it. Exactly. She took the pen. Her handwriting was slow but unwavering, each letter of her name pressed cleanly into the page. The final stroke of the W in Shaw landed like punctuation at the end of a sentence she'd been waiting months to finish. Connor watched her sign the second document, then the third. "I've got to say, most people your age get talked into giving away control," he said. "You're the rare one doing the opposite. I learned a long time ago that trust should be earned, especially the legal kind." He smiled at that, gathered the signed pages and slid them neatly into a filing envelope. "I'll have these recorded this afternoon with the county clerk. Once it's logged, it's untouchable." Linda stood, smoothing her coat. "Then that's one less thing my daughter can plan for." Connor raised an eyebrow, a trace of amusement under his professionalism. "Sounds like you've got a bigger plan of your own. Just making sure she doesn't confuse my assets with her ambitions." By the time Linda reached home, the clouds had thickened, the air carrying the faint smell of rain. She set her purse on the kitchen counter, poured herself tea, and let the quiet of the house fill her ears. Every creak of the wood floor, every clock tick reminded her of why she'd done this. Not out of spite, but to preserve the sanctity of her own effort. Her phone rang. Rachel. Linda answered, keeping her tone even. "Hello?" "Hey, Mom!" Rachel's voice was all honeyed brightness. "Just checking if you had time to look over those condo listings I sent. There's a unit opening next month, right by that care facility I told you about." Linda looked out the window, watching the first drops of rain stipple the porch railing. "I did look, actually." "Oh, good. I thought you'd like them once you saw—" "I'm staying put," Linda interrupted gently. A pause followed, small but telling. Rachel recovered fast. "Well, that's fine, Mom. No rush at all. I just want you comfortable, that's all." "I am comfortable." The tone between them tightened like fabric pulling at the seams. Then Rachel gave a polite laugh, the kind meant to close a conversation without surrendering. "Okay, well, I'll call later in the week. You do that." When the line went dead, Linda set the phone down beside her tea and exhaled. The house was hers. Legally, absolutely, irrevocably. By late afternoon, Connor called to confirm the filings had gone through. "All recorded," he said. "Congratulations, Ms. Shaw. You're officially in full control of your estate." "Thank you, Connor. I appreciate how fast you moved on this." "No problem. I believe in protecting people who protect themselves." He hesitated. "One other thing. I just got an alert from the title clerk's office." Linda straightened. "What kind of alert?" "There was an inquiry," Connor said carefully. "A title pull request under your address, filed by someone named Rachel Langford. It flagged because the property ownership changed hands this morning." Linda went completely still, the phone pressed against her ear. Outside, the rain began in earnest, tapping the windows in rapid rhythm. Connor's voice softened. "She tried to pull your home title, Linda, less than 2 hours after we filed it." For a moment, the only sound in the house was the storm growing stronger. Then Linda's lips curved into the faintest, most deliberate smile. "Then it seems," she said, her voice calm as ever, "that the timing couldn't have been better." The following Thursday began quietly, too quietly, the kind of morning that made Linda suspicious by habit. The rain had finally cleared, leaving the air sharp with the smell of wet concrete. She was in the kitchen, buttering toast, when the phone rang. "Connor Blake," she read on the screen. She answered. "Good morning." Connor's voice was brisk, but beneath it ran an undercurrent of disbelief. "Linda, I thought you should hear this from me before someone else calls. Your daughter tried to impersonate you this morning." Linda set down the knife. "Where?" "At the county clerk's office. She showed up with a fake authorization letter. Claimed she needed copies of the new deed for verification. The clerk recognized your name. Called my office before processing anything." Linda felt a familiar stillness settle in, the same calm she used to feel during an emergency shift. Did they give her the documents? No. They stalled her until the system flagged it. I've already drafted a cease and desist letter and it'll be sent to her by courier today. Thank you, Linda said simply. You've done the right thing. Connor hesitated. I don't want you alarmed, but she looked agitated. The clerk said she left muttering about lawyers overstepping. You might want to keep the doors locked for a few days. Linda smiled faintly, though her pulse had quickened. They're always locked, Connor. After the call, she finished making her toast, the simple act grounding her. Butter, crust, plate. Ordinary gestures of control. Rachel could play every trick she wanted, but this house, this calm, was her domain. By early afternoon, a silver SUV pulled into the driveway. Linda saw it through the lace curtains before the knock came. She took her time answering, letting the seconds stretch until Rachel's second, sharper knock landed. When she opened the door, Rachel's face was flushed, eyes bright with fury barely contained. What did you do? She demanded. Linda's expression didn't change. Good afternoon to you. Too. Rachel stepped inside without invitation, heels clicking on the hardwood. You had Connor send me some threatening legal letter? Cease and desist? You're treating me like some criminal. You impersonated me at the county office, Linda said evenly. That's not family business. That's fraud. Rachel threw up her hands. Oh my God, Mom, you're blowing this way out of proportion. I was just trying to make sure the records were accurate. You're letting that lawyer poison you against your own family. Linda folded her arms, unmoved. I'm letting the law protect me from manipulation. There's a difference. Rachel's voice cracked under its own strain. You're making things hard for everyone. Everyone but me, Linda said softly. The words landed like a door closing. Rachel stared at her, mouth slightly open. The control she clung to slipping through her manicured fingers. You think you're clever, don't you? You think locking everything down makes you safe? It just makes you paranoid. Maybe, but I sleep better this way. Rachel laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Eric says you've changed. You used to be reasonable. Linda's eyes flicked toward the window, where the sun was fading behind a thin veil of clouds. Reasonable people get taken advantage of. I'm finished being reasonable. Rachel's breath hitched. Her anger faltered into something colder. Fine, if that's how you want it. But don't come crying to me when you realize who's really on your side. Linda met her gaze. I'm very clear on who's on my side. For a moment they stood in silence, the air between them heavy with things neither would ever take back. Then Rachel turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. Linda didn't flinch. She waited until the sound of the SUV faded down the street before walking to her desk. On it sat the file marked Property Trust, Final. She opened it briefly, scanning the notarized seals, the official stamp, her own careful signature. Everything in order. Outside, a faint wind stirred the maple leaves, whispering against the window pane. Linda picked up her phone, thumbed a quick message to Connor. Cease and desist received. Visit complete. No damage done. She hesitated, then added another line. She's not finished. Connor replied moments later. Then neither are we. Linda leaned back in her chair, watching the light shift across the quiet room. Her house felt different now. Fortified, settled, almost alive in its defiance, but under the calm ran something electric. Rachel had crossed from scheming into confrontation, and Linda knew that once a person took that step, they rarely turned back. She folded her arms, a small, knowing smile playing at the edge of her mouth. The game had changed. And this time, Rachel wasn't the one setting the rules. The storm came. Not with thunder, but with whispers. By Sunday afternoon, Linda's phone began lighting up with unfamiliar numbers. A cousin from Knoxville, another from Atlanta, a church acquaintance she hadn't spoken to in years. The messages all bled into one anxious refrain. Rachel says you've been acting strange, Linda. Do you need help managing your finances? Maybe it's time to think about assisted living, just to be safe. Linda read each text slowly, her pulse steady but her jaw tightening. She didn't reply. Not yet. She recognized the pattern, the frantic efficiency of Rachel's spin machine. When Rachel couldn't control the paperwork, she tried to control the narrative. That evening, the phone rang again. This time, it was a familiar name. "Hey, Judy," Linda said, her tone calm as ever. "Linda, honey." Cousin Judy's voice trembled, thick with forced gentleness. "Rachel's been saying you're not quite yourself lately. Forgetful. Confused. I told her that didn't sound like you, but she said she was worried." "Worried?" Linda echoed, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Did she mention why?" Judy hesitated. "Something about you signing strange documents. She said a lawyer might be taking advantage." Linda turned slightly, glancing at the folder still sitting on her desk, the one stamped and sealed with her own decisions. "I appreciate your concern, Judy, but I assure you I know exactly what I signed and who drafted it." "I figured as much," Judy sighed. "You sound perfectly fine to me." "I am fine," Linda said. "Would you like to see the proof?" An hour later, Linda sent an email. Attached were PDFs, notarized statements from Connor Blake, copies of her trust filings, and, at the bottom, a one-page evaluation from her physician confirming her cognitive health. Connor had insisted on it after Rachel's earlier tantrum, just in case. Within minutes, Judy called back, her voice warm and indignant now. "Well, that settles that. Lord, that girl has some nerve." "Ambition without boundaries?" Linda said. "It's a dangerous mix." By Monday morning, word had started circling back. A cousin posted vaguely on Facebook about family drama and unfounded rumors. Another tagged Linda in a cheerful comment about resilience. Rachel's story was cracking under the weight of its own exaggeration. Then came Molly. Her post went up mid-afternoon. "Just had coffee with my friend Linda Shaw. For anyone wondering, she's sharper than any of us, and far more organized. Some people confuse independence with instability. Don't make that mistake." Within an hour, the post had 50 likes, a string of supportive comments, and a single furious emoji reaction from Rachel Langford. Linda saw it all unfold quietly from her tablet, sipping coffee in the same kitchen Rachel had once tried to claim. She wasn't much for social media, but she appreciated precision when it came from someone else's mouth. Connor called later that day. "You've made the front page of a very small, very dramatic family Facebook group," he said dryly. Linda chuckled. "And yet, no legal repercussions for being sane." He laughed. "None whatsoever. But I've got something for you. Just to close the loop." That evening, a courier arrived with a slim envelope. Inside was a notarized document headed Verification of Mental Competency and Financial Independence. Connor's note was attached in blue ink, "For your records, and perhaps for framing." Linda smiled. She placed it neatly in her trust binder between property title and account authorization. Proof, sealed and undeniable. That night, her phone rang again. Rachel's name flashed across the screen, but Linda let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, she listened. "I hope you're happy, Mom. You've humiliated me. You've made me look crazy to everyone. But you'll regret turning people against me. You always do." Linda pressed delete. The message evaporated, leaving only silence. She looked around her kitchen. The lemon-yellow walls. The ticking clock. The framed photo of Rachel at age 10, gap-toothed and grinning. She thought about how control had once seemed like love, how love had become leverage. Now, all of it felt like distance, necessary and earned. Outside, dusk fell soft over the yard, and the wind carried the faint scent of wet leaves. The world had gone still again, peaceful in the way that only follows exposure. Her phone buzzed once more, this time a text from Connor. Damage contained, but brace yourself. She won't stop until she's cornered. Linda stared at the words, her expression unreadable. Then she set the phone down beside her coffee and whispered, half to herself, half to the quiet. Then I'll make sure she knows exactly what a corner feels like. The next week began with quiet skies and the kind of deceptive calm that always made Linda wary. She was sorting her mail, bills, a flyer, a bank statement, when her phone rang. The caller ID made her pause. Cumberland Credit Union, branch office. She answered. This is Linda Shaw. Linda, it's Cindy, came the familiar low voice. You might want to sit down. Linda didn't. Go ahead. She tried again, Cindy said, words clipped, efficient. Rachel called this morning pretending to be you. She scheduled a meeting for 1 o'clock to reorganize your account access. Said you'd changed your estate manager. We verified her call against the authorization list and, well, Cindy exhaled softly. We knew it wasn't you. Linda stared at the window, the reflection of her face calm and still. 1 o'clock, you said? That's right, I was going to cancel, but… No, Linda interrupted gently. Leave it on the schedule. There was a small silence on the line. You're coming in yourself? I think it's time my daughter learned who she's really dealing with. The lobby of the credit union smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and roasted coffee from the machine near the teller line. Linda arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in a navy coat and her good shoes, carrying her worn leather folder, the one Rachel had never been allowed to touch. Cindy met her near the desk, her eyes widening in quiet admiration. I told them you'd show up, she murmured, ushering her into the small conference room with glass walls. Linda set her purse neatly on the table, every movement deliberate. Let's make sure the chair is warm when she arrives. Cindy smiled. I'll bring your file in now. Your real one. Through the glass, Linda could see the front doors each time they opened, the bell chiming softly. She could feel her pulse but not her nerves. She'd spent years navigating emergencies where every second mattered. This was just another kind of triage. At 1 o'clock sharp, she took the seat marked with a small nameplate. Mrs. Linda Shaw. Cindy placed a folder in front of her. These are your verified documents. We'll go through them together before she arrives. Linda nodded. The folder was immaculate. Signatures, seals, and a notarized copy of her trust paperwork. Every boundary she had built, every safeguard she'd constructed, lay quietly on that table like invisible armor. At 1:13, the glass door swung open. Rachel entered, all poise and motion, holding a sleek leather binder. For a fraction of a second, the color drained from her face when she saw her mother already seated. Mom, she said, startled. You're early. No, Linda replied softly. I'm on time. You're late. Rachel blinked, recovering quickly, turning her smile toward Cindy. There must be a mistake. I was told my mother wanted me to help reorganize her accounts. Cindy folded her hands. There's no mistake. Mrs. Shaw is the only authorized client on this account, and she's here to confirm that herself. Linda turned, meeting Rachel's eyes with the calm precision that used to silence unruly hospital interns. You don't speak for me. Not legally, not financially, not emotionally. The words hung in the air, heavy and exact. Rachel laughed lightly, but it cracked at the edges. Mom, you're being dramatic. I'm just trying to control what isn't yours, Linda interrupted, her tone gentle, almost maternal. You've mistaken access for authority. Cindy's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and gave Linda a small nod. Connor Blake just confirmed via email that your accounts remain protected and inaccessible to any third parties. He asked me to tell you, all fortresses secure. Rachel's composure faltered completely. You called your lawyer? Over your own daughter? I didn't have to call him, Linda said. He stays informed. That's what professionals do. Rachel's lips trembled, caught between anger and disbelief. You've really turned everyone against me. No, Linda said softly, standing. You did that yourself. The quiet in the room deepened until even the hum of the air vent seemed loud. Linda picked up her purse, glanced at Cindy. Please make sure my contact list remains locked. Already done, Cindy said, her voice firm. Rachel stood there, frozen, binder clutched against her chest as Linda walked past her. You can't just shut me out, she said, voice rising. Linda paused at the doorway. Rachel, she said, without turning around, you were never shut out. You walked out. There's a difference. And with that, she left. Heels clicking across the tile, each step a punctuation mark. Outside, the afternoon sun broke through thin clouds, washing the parking lot in a hard, clean light. Linda exhaled, long and even. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Connor. Expect legal mail soon. She's making formal noise now. Linda stared at the message, then at the sunlight gleaming on her windshield. The game, it seemed, was about to escalate again. She unlocked the car, slid into the driver's seat, and whispered to herself, let her make noise. I've already built the silence she can't touch. Monday dawned cool and deceptively still, the kind of morning that made the world look harmless. Linda sat at her kitchen table, her tea cooling beside a folder of transfer authorizations. The light through the window fell in narrow stripes across the paperwork. Precise, unwavering. Connor's email from the night before had been short. Ready when you are. We'll move all accounts under the trust umbrella. Linda clicked her pen and began signing. The motions were calm, mechanical, but every signature carried a quiet pulse of resolve. By noon, her checking, savings, and pension deposits had all been rerouted into the trust's new secure account. The last unguarded door was now locked. Cindy called to confirm the transition. Everything cleared, Linda. Balance transfers, authorizations, all done. She can't even view the old accounts. System flags her immediately. Linda smiled faintly. That's good to hear. I've been in banking 30 years, Cindy said, a trace of admiration in her voice. Never seen someone shut down a breach this elegantly. I had practice, Linda replied. 40 years in hospitals teaches you to double-check every chart before someone else signs it. By the next morning, the quiet started to shift. Her phone lit up twice in an hour. Security alerts from the trust bank. Unauthorized login attempts detected. Both traced to the same IP address. Linda forwarded the alerts to Connor's office with 2 words. As predicted. Within the hour, Connor called. We've already logged the activity and prepared a formal notice. She's technically committing digital impersonation now. Borderline felony. Linda stirred sugar into her tea. Borderline isn't enough. Make it official if she pushes again. Connor hesitated. You're certain? I'm certain, Linda said. If she wants to act like a stranger, I'll treat her like one. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. When she opened it, Eric stood there, hat in hand, eyes full of fatigue. He looked older than his 39 years, like a man trying to keep peace in a house made of glass. Linda, he began softly, please don't press charges. She's wound tight. Losing control of this stuff, it's messing with her head. Linda studied him for a moment, noting the way he twisted his wedding ring unconsciously. You knew about her trying to log in? He winced. She told me after. Said she just wanted to see if you were okay financially, but I think it was more than that. It always is, Linda said. She gestured toward the porch chair. Sit down, Eric. He did, looking both relieved and ashamed. She doesn't understand you're not her project, he said finally. She thinks fixing people proves she's strong. Linda folded her hands. Tell her to stop pressing her luck, Eric. I'm not the one she's hurting anymore. It's herself. He nodded, eyes glassy. I'll try. After he left, Linda returned to her desk, the late afternoon light catching the edges of her paperwork. There was a peculiar peace in seeing her name exactly where it belonged, on the signature line of everything she owned. She opened her laptop, navigated to the trust's new account, and clicked Transfer. The cursor blinked beside a field labeled Charitable Donation. Recipient: the Tennessee Nursing Education Foundation. Amount: $10,000 memo. For those who care without control. When the confirmation appeared, Linda allowed herself the smallest smile. Money, after all, was only powerful if it reflected purpose. The next morning, the mail arrived early, an envelope from Davidson County Civil Court. The thick official paper carried weight before she even opened it. She slid it cleanly with her letter opener and began reading. Petition for guardianship of an incapacitated adult. Petitioner: Rachel Langford. Respondent: Linda Shaw. For a long moment the room fell utterly still. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to fade, the air holding its breath. Rachel had done it. Linda set the papers down carefully, pressing the edges flat with her fingertips. It wasn't fear that moved through her. It was something colder, sharper. A clarity so pure it almost felt like calm. She picked up her phone and called Connor. He answered on the first ring. It came, she said. He didn't ask what. He already knew. All right, he said. We'll handle it. But Linda, this one's public. She's taking it to court. Linda looked out the window. The sky had gone pale, the light thinning like paper. Then she's about to learn what happens, Linda said quietly, when you try to steal power from the wrong hands. She hung up, slid the summons into a clean file labeled "To be answered," and leaned back in her chair. For the first time since this began, she wasn't just defending what was hers. She was ready to fight back. The courthouse smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper, an odd mix of order and decay. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows of courtroom 3B, washing everything in the same pale neutrality. Linda Shaw sat beside Connor Blake at the defense table, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her expression composed. Across the aisle, Rachel was radiant in a practiced way, hair glossed, blazer pressed, voice already calibrated for sympathy. Eric sat 2 rows behind her, shoulders hunched, eyes cast down. The bailiff called the session to order. A small crowd murmured. Family, curious locals, a few distant cousins lured by gossip. Linda didn't look at them. Her focus was forward. Rachel began her testimony, voice trembling in all the right places. Your Honor, I'm not trying to take anything from my mother. I'm trying to protect her. She's been confused lately, signing papers she doesn't understand, trusting people she barely knows. She's financially unstable, and I'm just trying to make sure she's safe. Connor didn't move, but Linda felt his quiet inhale, his readiness. The judge, a tall woman with silver hair and half-moon glasses, turned toward Linda. Ms. Shaw, are you represented? Connor stood. Connor Blake for the respondent, Your Honor. He handed over a slim, organized folder. In addition to Ms. Shaw's existing trust documentation, we've included notarized cognitive evaluations from her physician, a statement of financial competence from Cumberland Credit Union, and receipts verifying all legal transfers were authorized solely by her. The judge flipped through the pages. Everything appears current. Rachel's voice sharpened. Your Honor, those were orchestrated after I expressed concern. That lawyer, he's manipulating her. Connor raised an eyebrow. Respectfully, Ms. Langford, My firm's involvement predates your petition by several weeks. Every action we've taken was initiated by your mother, not you. The judge's gaze shifted to Linda. Mrs. Shaw, would you like to speak on your own behalf? Connor touched her wrist briefly, a silent reminder that she didn't have to. But Linda rose anyway, smoothing the front of her blazer as she stood. Thank you, Your Honor, she said, her voice steady. I've listened to my daughter describe me as unstable, forgetful, vulnerable. I won't respond in kind, because that would make this about emotion, not truth. The courtroom was silent. Even Rachel stopped fidgeting with her pen. I was a registered nurse for 40 years, Linda continued. I managed patient medications, hospital budgets, and end-of-life care for people who trusted me to keep their details straight when no one else could. I'm not confused. I'm not unstable. I am organized, deliberate, and, most importantly, capable. She turned slightly, her eyes finding Rachel's. I earned every cent I have, and I will spend it or save it as I choose. Rachel's face stiffened. The control she'd rehearsed for weeks slipped by degrees. Linda looked back to the judge. That's all I have to say. The judge adjusted her glasses, studying the file once more. When she spoke, her tone carried the weight of finality. The evidence provided is thorough and persuasive. There is no indication of incompetence, incapacity, or financial instability. Petition denied. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Rachel's mouth fell open. Wait, Your Honor, you don't understand. The gavel came down, sharp and echoing. Ms. Langford, this matter is closed. You are warned not to file another guardianship petition without documented cause. Further attempts could result in sanctions. Rachel's voice broke on the word sanctions. You can't do this. I'm her daughter. Linda sat back down, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. And I'm still your mother, she said quietly. The bailiff called the next case. Connor began gathering their papers, his expression one of calm satisfaction. You handled that perfectly, he murmured. Linda gave a small nod. I wasn't performing. I was remembering who I am. As they left the courtroom, Rachel stood frozen in the aisle, pale beneath the makeup. Eric reached out as if to steady her, but she pulled away. Outside, the day was bright and sharp. Linda inhaled deeply, the courthouse doors closing behind her with a heavy metallic sigh. Connor handed her a manila envelope. Certified copy of the ruling. Frame it if you want. She tucked it under her arm. No, I'll file it where it belongs, under resolved. He smiled. Most people would celebrate after something like that. Oh, I will, Linda said. Just not yet. She turned toward the courthouse steps. The wind caught her hair as she descended, sunlight glinting off the gold of her wedding band. For the first time in months, she felt the weight of her independence settle back into place, not as defiance, but as peace earned. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. She didn't look at it, but she knew the sender. Rachel would try again, and when she did, Linda would be ready. For the first time in months, Linda's phone didn't buzz, ring, or light up at all. It was the quiet she'd wanted, clean, uninterrupted silence. But it came with a strange, fragile edge, as if the world itself were holding its breath. After the court ruling, she'd gone straight home, poured herself a glass of iced tea, and opened her contacts list. Her thumb hovered briefly over Rachel's name before pressing block. A small confirmation window appeared. You will no longer receive calls, texts, or voicemails from this contact. She pressed confirm. The screen went still. No sound, no vibration. That's that, she murmured. The house felt lighter immediately, the same way a patient's room did after an oxygen tank was finally disconnected. Quiet, clean, free of the constant hiss of dependency. By the end of the week, Linda had taken further steps. Her new P.O. box key dangled on her keyring, the metal tag stamped with the small number 214. It wasn't much, just a locked drawer inside the downtown post office, but it represented distance, controlled distance. All legal mail, all bank statements, all correspondence now rerouted. Cindy had been the one to help close the final loop. "Everything's secure now," Cindy said, sliding a form across the desk at the credit union. "The old accounts officially closed. New accounts only under the trust. Nobody else has access. Not even a whisper of it." Linda signed the line with her usual precision. "Thank you, Cindy. You've done more than most family would." Cindy smiled gently. "We look out for our own, Linda. You taught us that." Back home, the house felt almost new. Not in the physical sense. Her furniture was still the same, her curtains still the same, but in the absence of intrusion. Rachel's presence, her pressure, had lived in every unanswered call and every folded piece of mail. Now, they were gone. Molly came over on Friday morning with her laptop under one arm and a cinnamon latte in the other. "Lesson time," she announced, setting both down on the kitchen table. "You're learning encrypted email today, because your daughter clearly knows too many people who shouldn't have your information." Linda laughed softly. "And here I thought I was done with homework." "Never," Molly said, pulling up a seat. "Now, this program here, see the lock icon? That means it's secure. You'll use this for Connor, banking updates, and me if you're ever sending anything sensitive." They went through the setup together. Linda's hands were slower than they used to be, but deliberate. By the time they finished, she had a new inbox, password protected, recovery key printed and stored in her filing cabinet. Molly leaned back, satisfied. "There, you're practically NSA ready." Linda smiled, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Next lesson, banana bread. Fair trade." "Deal." By evening, the scent of banana and brown sugar filled the kitchen. Linda slid the loaf out of the oven and set it to cool by the window. Outside, the sky had turned that Nashville blue-gray before dusk, a soft wind threading through the maple branches. She watched the world without rush, without noise. The next morning, she started walking again. Just a few blocks, past the Hendersons' mailbox, the community park, the small row of cottages that always smelled faintly of honeysuckle. Her legs ached, but it was the good kind of ache, the sort that reminded her she was still in motion. On her third morning out, she found an envelope propped against her front door. Plain white, no return address. She picked it up, heart tightening for a brief second before she recognized the handwriting. Neat, familiar, apologetic. Eric Langford. Inside was a single folded note. "Linda, I wanted to say thank you for protecting yourself, and, in a strange way, for protecting me too. Things have been difficult here. You were right. Control can look a lot like care until you finally see the difference. I hope you're doing well. You deserve some peace." Linda read it twice, then set it gently on the kitchen counter beside the cooling rack. For a long time she just stood there, the early light washing through the windows. Peace. The word lingered, thin as a whisper. Her phone, still silent, sat on the counter beside the bread knife. No calls, no messages, no new noise. Rachel had fallen quiet, completely. And that, Linda realized, was what unsettled her most. Because silence, when it came from Rachel, was never surrender. It was strategy. She looked toward the window, watching the maple branches sway in the rising wind. Something was coming. And whatever it was, Linda Shaw would be ready. Again. It started with a letter. Hand-delivered, not mailed. Linda found it tucked beneath her front door one gray afternoon, the same tidy handwriting that had haunted her for months. "Mom, I think we've both said things we regret. I don't want to fight anymore. Can we talk?" Maybe bring in a mediator. Someone neutral for the family's sake. We could resolve this without dragging it further. You know I love you. Linda read it twice, her expression unchanging. She'd seen enough hospital apologies in her life to recognize when compassion was tactical. The letter wasn't reconciliation, it was reconnaissance. She folded the note neatly and slipped it into her desk drawer beside the others. That evening, she called Connor. "She's reached out," Linda said. "I assumed she would." Connor's tone was dry, almost unsurprised. "What's the pitch?" "Mediation," Linda replied. "For the family's sake." Connor chuckled softly. "That's a fishing expedition. She's hoping you'll open a door, say something she can use in court or in the public record." "I thought so." He hesitated. "Do you want me to respond on your behalf?" "No," Linda said. "There's no need." "What do you want to tell her then?" Linda looked out the window where dusk had begun to smudge the skyline in pale blue strokes. One line should do it. The next morning she typed a short reply, measured, polite, impossible to twist. "Rachel, no mediation needed. The trust is settled." Mom. She hit send, closed the laptop, and felt a wave of clarity she hadn't realized she'd been waiting for. It wasn't triumph. It was relief. The kind that comes when a conversation is finally, irrevocably over. The reply must have landed fast because within an hour her phone buzzed with a new email from Connor, forwarded from Rachel's attorney. "Your daughter intends to make the matter public if her concerns are not addressed through mediation." Connor followed up seconds later with his own message. "Let her." Linda laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. The sound startled even her. When she answered his follow-up call, he was still amused. "If she wants to go public, that's her right, but all it'll do is broadcast her own failure. The records are airtight, the ruling's final. She can shout all she wants. The paper trail doesn't echo." Linda smiled into the receiver. "I like the way you put that." "I mean it, Linda. You've already won. Don't let her drag you back into the mud." "Don't worry," she said. "I'm finished stepping in it." Molly showed up the next day, carrying a picnic basket and an attitude of celebration. "I'm calling this a toxic-free brunch," she announced, setting down homemade muffins, fruit salad, and a bottle of champagne she'd been saving for something symbolic. Linda raised an eyebrow. "Toxic-free?" "No stress, no scheming, no unsolicited phone calls. We're cleansing your house, one cinnamon scone at a time." They ate in the kitchen with the windows open, the autumn air curling through in soft gusts. For the first time, Linda let herself exhale completely. The tension that had lived behind her ribs since spring began to loosen, piece by piece. "You know," Molly said between bites, "I've been thinking. Maybe all this was supposed to happen. You've built something stronger out of this. Boundaries, privacy, the works." Linda smiled faintly. "Maybe. I used to think silence meant peace. Now I know it just means space to rebuild." Molly nodded approvingly. "That's poetic. You should embroider it on a pillow." "I'll settle for banana bread," Linda said. They laughed. When Molly left that afternoon, the sun was bright again, the air holding the promise of late October. Linda washed the brunch dishes, dried them carefully, and placed them back in their cabinets. The rhythm of normalcy, soft, unhurried, felt like luxury. Later, she sat at her desk one last time, scrolling through her emails. Connor's thread sat pinned at the top, dozens of messages that had carried her through every stage of the storm. She read the subject lines: "Filing complete, case closed, all secure." She hovered over his contact, finger resting on the delete key. Connor had done his job. She no longer needed his protection. She clicked. Delete conversation. The inbox refreshed, leaving only quiet. Linda leaned back in her chair, looking around the house that was finally truly hers again. No tension, no noise, no half-truth sneaking through the door. And yet, even as peace wrapped around her like a well-worn blanket, something cold stirred beneath it. A whisper, the memory of Rachel's persistence. Because silence wasn't the end with her daughter. It was the inhale before the next strike. Outside, the wind shifted, rattling the porch chimes. Linda glanced toward the door, her expression unreadable. "Whatever you're planning next, Rachel," she said quietly, "I've already seen it coming." It began where most modern unravelings do, online. On a rainy Sunday morning, Molly arrived with 2 coffees and a grin that didn't quite hide her curiosity. "Don't look yet," she warned, sliding her phone across the table. "But your daughter's been busy on Facebook." Linda hesitated, then took the phone. The post stared back at her in bold, dramatic paragraphs. Some people spend their lives pretending to be independent when really, they're just bitter and lonely. I tried to help my mother, but she pushed away the only person who cared. She's being manipulated by people who want her money, and when she's gone, they'll disappear like they always do. The comments beneath were cautious. Little blue thumbs, half-hearted hearts, a handful of sympathetic remarks. But most were silent. A few family members had even hit unfollow. Linda scrolled once, twice, then set the phone down without expression. "That's her first real admission," she said quietly. "Of what?" Molly asked. "That she's losing her audience." By midweek, the rants grew more frantic. Rachel began tagging relatives, posting late-night videos from her kitchen, her voice pitched with rehearsed heartbreak. "I'm done trying to save someone who doesn't want saving. But the truth will come out. People need to know what really happened." Each post drew fewer reactions. By Thursday, even her cousins had stopped replying. Eric's message came that same night, not to Linda but to Connor's office. Connor forwarded it with a single line. "You'll want to see this." The attached document was a legal notice, petition for separation, Eric Langford versus Rachel Langford. The reasons cited in neat, neutral type: emotional manipulation, coercive control, and financial deceit. Linda read it 3 times, then set it aside. There was no satisfaction in it, only inevitability. When Molly called the next morning, Linda was already outside, pruning the hydrangeas. "It's happening," Molly said, her voice low but not surprised. "Eric moved out. He's staying with his brother in Belmead." "I hope he finds some peace," Linda replied, brushing dirt from her gloves. "You don't sound shocked." "I'm not," Linda said. "Rachel only knows how to manage what she owns. She's never learned how to keep what she loves." That weekend, Molly and Linda walked the loop around the park near the old river bridge. The sky was bright and windless, the trees flashing orange and gold. They carried coffee in travel mugs, their pace unhurried. "She wanted your money," Molly said after a while. "But she lost everything else instead." Linda nodded, eyes tracing the shimmer of the water below. "It's strange, isn't it? She fought so hard for control, and all it bought her was isolation." "You think she'll ever apologize?" Linda smiled faintly. "No, but I don't need her to." Silence was the only apology she had left. They walked another lap before stopping near the park bench. A young family passed, a mother pushing a stroller, the father chasing a laughing toddler, and for a fleeting second, Linda felt the hollow ache of what could have been. But she didn't let it linger. Some losses weren't meant to be mourned, they were meant to be understood. Back home, the late afternoon sun spilled gold across her porch. Linda knelt by the front steps, her gloved hands pressing lavender roots into the soil. The scent rose warm and sharp, a clean, healing smell. "Lavender for calm," she whispered, "for protection." She worked until the sun dipped low, until her knees ached, and her palms were streaked with dirt. By the time she stood, the air had cooled, the wind carrying that faint promise of November chill. Inside, the house was quiet. She made tea, washed her hands, and sat by the window to watch the sky deepen into dusk. The kind of peace she'd earned had a weight to it, solid and self-made. Her phone buzzed on the counter. One new voicemail. She frowned. It wasn't a number she recognized, but the area code was local. She pressed play. "Hi, Ms. Shaw. This is Cindy Ray from Cumberland Credit Union. I know it's after hours, but I thought you'd want to know. Someone tried to access your account again." Linda's grip on the phone tightened. Cindy's voice continued, steady but edged with concern. "This time, she used your maiden name, Linda Harper. She must have found an old record somewhere. Don't worry, the system blocked it immediately, but—" The message trailed off into static. Linda lowered the phone slowly, the quiet of the room pressing in around her. Outside, the wind rose again, rustling the new lavender plants along the porch. Rachel's silence, it seemed, had finally spoken. Linda looked out the window, her reflection calm and unflinching in the glass. "She's not finished," she said softly. Then, with a quiet resolve that had become second nature, she reached for her phone and started dialing Connor's number once more. The next morning broke gray and heavy, the air thick with the smell of damp earth. Linda woke before sunrise, already dressed in her navy coat by the time the kettle began to whistle. There was no hesitation left in her. Rachel's latest attempt hadn't rattled her. It had clarified her purpose. By 8 o'clock, she was walking through the glass doors of Cumberland Credit Union. Cindy Ray was waiting by the counter, a folder already in hand, her expression equal parts sympathy and admiration. "Morning, Linda," she said quietly. "I got your message last night. Let's get this taken care of." They moved to Cindy's office, a small room tucked in the corner with framed photos of Nashville landmarks and a pot of violets on the filing cabinet. Linda sat down, setting her own folder on the desk, a collection of paperwork that now seemed to travel everywhere she did. "She used my maiden name," Linda began. "Harper. I haven't gone by that in almost 50 years. Cindy nodded, flipping through the computer screen. She must have found some archived record. The system caught it because the social security number didn't match, but it's a clear impersonation attempt. We'll file an official financial identity fraud claim with the State Division." "Do it," Linda said. "And I want everything locked, permanently." "Understood." Cindy began typing, her nails clacking softly against the keyboard. "Once this goes through, no one, not even bank staff, will be able to access your accounts without physical verification from you. Thumbprint, ID, signature match. You'll be the only point of contact." Linda exhaled, slow and measured. "Good. I've had enough ghosts pretending to be me." When the forms were ready, she signed each one with her steady nurse's precision. Cindy scanned them into the system, then leaned back, folding her hands. "I'll contact the local PD to file a record. It won't be criminal, yet, but it'll serve as a formal warning." Linda's lips curved faintly. "Warnings are good. Paper trails are better." Cindy smiled. "I'll make sure it's both." 2 hours later, a uniformed officer knocked on Rachel Langford's door across town. The official warning was brief, just a printed notice, politely phrased but unmistakable in tone. Unauthorized financial activity. Identity misuse. Further attempts could result in criminal charges. Connor called Linda as soon as he got word. "Everything's documented," he said. "Police have it on record and the credit union sent me copies. But I'd like to take this one step further." "Go ahead." "I want to amend your trust," Connor said. "Permanently. Rachel's already excluded from management or inheritance. But we can file an irrevocable addendum that seals it legally. It'll ensure that even if you change your mind, or if she tries to challenge it, nothing reverts." Linda paused, her eyes drifting toward the lavender through the kitchen window, the plants swaying gently in the morning breeze. "Do it," she said finally. I'll courier the forms this afternoon, Connor replied. When they arrived, she read them carefully, line by line. The final clause, beneficiary exclusion, irrevocable, sat stark and clean on the page. She signed it with quiet finality. Connor's follow-up call was simple. It's done, Linda. The trust is sealed. Rachel is permanently disinherited. Linda didn't speak for a moment. When she finally did, her voice was calm, almost tender. Then that chapter's finished. Later that evening, Molly dropped by with her granddaughter, Emma, a bright-eyed 12-year-old who greeted Linda with shy enthusiasm. "Grandma says you used to be a nurse," the girl said. "I want to be one too. I like helping people." Linda smiled. "Helping people is good work, honey, the kind that stays with you." After they left, Linda sat at her desk again. The paperwork from the day lay neatly stacked. Fraud claims, legal filings, confirmations. All tidy, all contained. But she wasn't thinking about Rachel anymore. She was thinking about Emma, about the next generation of women who would learn what it meant to hold their own names, their own worth. She opened her laptop and navigated to her bank's trust portal. The cursor blinked beside the field labeled New Fund Creation. Account name, the Emma Henderson Education Fund. Initial deposit, $25,000. Purpose, to support young women pursuing nursing and financial independence. She pressed submit. The confirmation pinged a moment later. Linda leaned back, exhaling. For the first time in months, the air around her felt entirely hers. No noise, no intrusion, no lingering shadow of ownership by anyone else. Her phone buzzed once. Connor's message. All filings complete. She can't touch a cent. Or a syllable. Linda smiled. The name she used, she murmured, was never hers to begin with. Outside, dusk had settled in, painting the sky over Nashville in streaks of violet and blue. The lavender on the porch stirred in the wind, their scent drifting through the open window. Linda turned off her desk lamp. Her silhouette reflected faintly in the glass. The quiet wasn't fragile anymore. It was earned, defended, absolute. And somewhere beyond that calm, Rachel was still moving, searching for another way in. Linda looked out at the fading light and whispered to herself, not in anger, but in promise. Try again, and you'll find every door already locked. The sun rose soft and gold over Maplewood Lane, catching the edges of Linda Shaw's freshly mowed lawn and the tables she'd set out the night before. White linens fluttered in the breeze, pitchers of lemonade glinting in the early light. The air carried the warm, earthy scent of lavender and something sweeter, banana bread cooling on the porch rail. By 10, the first guests began to arrive, nurses from the nearby hospital, some retired, some still working long shifts at St. Mary's. Their laughter filled the yard like music, a gentle hum of shared fatigue and pride. Linda stood by the garden gate, greeting each one with that old professional calm that had once steadied panicked patients. "Welcome," she said, shaking hands, offering smiles. "Come in. Eat something before you tell me how many hours you've worked this week." Molly moved through the crowd with a clipboard and her usual efficiency. "Everyone keeps asking how you pulled this off," she whispered. "I told them years of paperwork make for great event planning." Linda chuckled. "And you were right." Halfway through brunch, Connor arrived, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, a folder tucked under one arm. He lingered near the buffet table until Linda noticed him. "You made it," she said, handing him a glass of lemonade. "I couldn't miss it," Connor replied, glancing around at the gathering. "Word travels fast. You've started something bigger than you think." Before Linda could respond, Molly tapped a spoon against a glass, calling for quiet. "Everyone, before we eat ourselves into oblivion, I want to make a quick announcement on behalf of our host." The chatter hushed. Linda felt every pair of eyes turn toward her, warm and expectant. Molly grinned. What began as the Emma Henderson Education Fund has officially been expanded and renamed. As of this morning, it's now the Linda Shaw Resilience Grant. Applause broke out, startled at first, then steady and full. Linda blinked, momentarily caught off guard. I didn't, she began, but Molly raised a hand. You didn't know, she said, laughing. That's the point. You've built something worth naming. It's for every woman who's been told she needs someone else to manage her life. Connor stepped forward, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. And for the record, the legal paperwork is final. The trust is sealed, the fund's independent, and there are no loopholes left to close. Linda smiled. You always did like saying that. He grinned. And now I finally get to mean it. The rest of the morning unfolded like a memory worth keeping. Sunlight filtering through oak branches, nurses swapping stories of double shifts and stubborn patients, laughter rising and falling like the rhythm of a heartbeat. Later, when the tables had emptied and the last guests drifted home, Linda and Molly sat side by side in the garden, the air rich with the smell of lavender and the faint tang of coffee. You did it, Molly said softly. Every part of it. She can't touch a thing now. Linda looked out at the flowers swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. She's already gone, Molly. The noise, the fighting. It was all just smoke. I see that now. Molly leaned back in her chair. Do you think she'll ever call again? Linda's gaze was steady. If she does, there'll be nothing left to take. A small silence settled between them, comfortable this time. From the corner of the yard came the sound of wind chimes, a soft, steady rhythm against the fading hum of the neighborhood. Linda's phone vibrated once on the table. A notification from the postal service. Certified letter delivered. Recipient signature, R. Langford. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. The final envelope had arrived, the one containing the legal notice of Rachel's permanent disinheritance. There would be no response. Not this time. Instead, Linda closed the screen and let the phone rest face down. By the end of the week, her schedule was full again. 2 young women, students from the local nursing college, came by each afternoon, notebooks in hand, eager to learn about healthcare finance and estate planning. Linda taught them the way she once taught new nurses to read vital signs, patiently, precisely, with quiet insistence on self-reliance. The trick, she told them, is to make every decision before someone else tries to make it for you. They nodded, scribbling notes, unaware that they were sitting in the aftermath of a long war fought, not with shouting, but with signatures and strategy. That night, after the students left, Linda poured herself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the porch. The lavender shimmered silver in the moonlight. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called, its cry fading into the quiet hum of Nashville's outskirts. She thought of Rachel, not with anger, but with a strange kind of pity. Control had been her daughter's language. And Linda had finally stopped speaking it. The air was cool, the house behind her warm, and the silence, this time, felt like freedom. She smiled, whispering the last truth of her long battle into the calm Tennessee night. She planned my future for me, Linda said, her voice barely above the rustle of the wind, and I quietly rewrote every page.